Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now. Because what are you here for? I've never seen somebody so worthless in my life.
Far, far away in the lands between was the ugliest face this world had seen. Balding, antisocial, below average in height, no maidens, no paper, powerless in a fight. Cursed by the gods to die in obscurity, the demigod Chads compounded his insecurity. A kissless 30-something who'd never had a date, what else could he do but accept his sad fate? With such a bleak future lying ahead, he wondered if he would be better off dead. He clenched his fists tight and said, "No, this is wrong." For his muscles were weak, but his heart was strong. He refused to lie down and accept his defeat. So he held his head high and rose to his feet. "My maidenless brothers," he proclaimed on Reddit, "I am the hero who you will soon accredit. I shall slay the demigods by my very sword, collect all the great runes, and become Elden Lord." This is the story of the man named Short King and his bloody adventure to mend the Elden Ring. If you've played Elden Ring, you're probably aware that Melina appears early on to offer the player a steed, the chance to level up, and access to an area of the game called the Round Table Hold. Interesting enough, you can actually refuse this offer. So, many players have speculated whether a maidenless run is possible. The consensus seems to be a resounding kinda. There's a glitch that lets you teleport to the end of the game, and you can perform this glitch without a maiden, so yes, it is possible, but that's not the question I'm going to answer today. I have my set sight on a much grander ideal. Can you beat Elden Ring maidenless at level 1 and acquire every great rune in the game? The answer is a bit more complicated than you might think. So, what are the rules for this run? Well, there's 4 big ones. I start the game as a level 1 wretch. I didn't have to do this, but if I didn't, everyone would make fun of me and call me a fake gamer. I cannot interact with Melina in any capacity. Short King is not only terrified of women, but he breaks down when dealing with confrontation. As such, we will not be refusing Melina's offer, but rather avoiding her altogether. The run is not complete until all 7 great runes are collected. And finally, do not take no for an answer. I will not be elaborating further. Additionally, I did not collect the Spirit Calling Bell. This means I can't summon ashes to help me for the whole game. Did I intend for this? No. Did it make the game 10 times harder than it needed to be? Probably. But since I can't access the Round Table Hold, I had to reconcile with the fact that I wouldn't be able to summon any spirits for this entire challenge. My first order of business was to head to the Weeping Peninsula to collect the Morningstar weapon. This weapon was important since it can inflict bleed, which deals a fixed percentage of health and makes up for our overall damage deficit. It's also one of the only bleed weapons I can use at this point, since I only have 10 strength and dexterity. Along the way, I pass by the Site of Grace where Melina usually appears. However, never resting here or at the Church of Allay means we won't have to encounter her and have an awkward conversation. So after grabbing the Morningstar, I sprint over to a nearby minor Erd Tree and kill the Erd Tree avatar for the Opaline Bubble tier. And bop, and bop. And bop. This item gives me a bit of leeway in some of the harder fights later since it can grant a barrier that negates damage once, letting me survive a hit as opposed to dying in one shot. After this, I head to the Tower of Return. There's a chest there that teleports me to the Divine Bridge. No, not that bridge. And we can warp back here at any time. This will be important later. With that, there isn't much more I can do to prepare for our first mandatory fight, Margit. At least that's what I thought at the time. I forgot about the Margit shackle. Whoops. It took a few tries, but with the help of my boy Rajier, he didn't pose much of an issue. Margit the Fell Omen, more like Margit the Fell Over, am I right, gamers? Fortunately, I was able to beat him without needing to think, and continued on through Stormvale Castle. got locked in a room with this banished knight who I managed to defeat, and fumbled my way to the top of the castle, where I was then promptly slaughtered by some stray poultry. I made it back up without too much difficulty and took my revenge on the foul avian in one of the most stressful fights I've ever had with a common enemy in this game. After that, it wasn't long before I managed to creep through the castle courtyard undetected and reach the site of grace right before Godric the Grafted. Godric is the second mandatory boss of this run, and a holder of one of the 7 great runes we need to collect. Godric was bound to provide a bit of a challenge, but fortunately, I came prepared. On my first few attempts, I died pathetically, but on my 6th attempt, I managed to get him into his second phase. This is where I could spring my plan into action, but I'd only have one shot at this. Right before the screen fades out, I apply rock grease to my Morning Star. Then, the plan is to rush him down and turn the Geneva Convention into the Geneva Suggestion. The plan goes perfectly, and I'm able to afflict Godric with Scarlet Rot right off the bat. Now, all that was left was to wait out the timer on his rapidly shrinking life. I spent the rest of the fight just barely weaving through his flames, and it seemed like it was working. But right before he died, the Scarlet Rot wore off. Uh-oh, I'm out of knives. Yeah! Completely outplayed Godric. Though he was anemic and physically weak, the mighty Godric had fallen to the hands of this freak. Short King, once dismissed as a drop in the pond, had acquired a great rune and set his sights beyond. He reveled in this victory, but couldn't yet rest, for the path of Elden Lord was reserved for the best. 6 great runes remained, he held merely one. His violent journey had only begun. Now that we had access to the Lake of Liurnia, the next important item to grab was the Ice Rind Hatchet. Full disclaimer, I did downgrade my game to an earlier version, just so I could use the ability Hoarfrost Stomp before it got nerfed into Oblivion. Does this make me a coward? Maybe. But in my opinion, the fun of this challenge is crafting the route, not fighting all the bosses at level 1. And since I'm already forced to play without spirit summons, I will take any advantage I can get to make the run more manageable. That said, Hoarfrost Stomp is absolutely fucking busted. At this point in the game, its damage output is insane, and it scales all the way until the endgame. Expect to see every major boss from this point onward be defeated by the Elden Ring equivalent of stepping on Lego. Unfortunately, there was one problem with the hatchet. I don't have the stats to use it. It requires 16 dexterity, and all my stats are stuck at 10, so I would have to find items to raise my dex by at least 6 points. Luckily, I knew how to do this. By taking a detour to Caelid, we're able to do Millicent's questline. This quest rewards us with a talisman that boosts dexterity by 5 when equipped. All we need is a golden needle that drops from this boss in the middle of this rotting puddle of scarlet shit in Caelid. This took quite a while, but I managed to cheese the boss with poison arrows. While we're still in Caelid, we head over to Fort Feroth and grab the Radagon Soar Seal. This talisman raises a few of my stats by 5 each in exchange for making me take 15% more damage. One of these stats happens to be dexterity, so with both of these equipped, we are able to wield the Ice Rind Hatchet and start abusing Hoarfrost Stomp. I killed another Erdtree avatar in the Lake of Liurnia and get the Ruptured Crystal Tear. This will become important later. I then went to Master Iji to upgrade the Ice Rind Hatchet to +4. Thank you, Iji, for doing the Lord's work. With that, it was time to take our first steps into Raya Lucaria. But even with our new disguise, it took no time at all before the students realized I wasn't one of them and immediately started blasting. So, Short King did what he was best at. Running. The Academy was an eccentric place with many unique personalities. It was all a little overstimulating for the antisocial hero. However, there was a silver lining to all this. The Academy has a pet dog, and Short King is great with animals. From here, I take a slight detour and get voluntarily kidnapped by an abductor virgin. This sends me to Lethal Lava Land, where I collect enough somber smithing stones to upgrade my Cheese Rind Hatchet to +6 before going to face Renala, who is like the dean of the school or something. I don't know, Elden Ring lore is hard. This is it. Yes! Tuition fees are a scam anyways. 2 out of 7 great runes acquired. With the rune of rebirth snatched from its holder, our hero Short King was feeling much bolder. 2 of the 7 great runes he now held, as he stood atop a mountain, foes he had felled. The rune of rebirth contains special magic, capable of making his genetics less tragic. Short King thought long and hard, looked deep in his soul. What of his followers to whom he'd announced his goal? Could he really change his self-portrayal? Or would his followers see this as betrayal? It took only a second of shallow introspection for Short King to know he couldn't stand his reflection. Now was his chance, his journey was worth it. Once he was reborn, he'd finally be perfect. Going from one shard bear to the next, we head straight through the Volcano Manor until we reach a portal. Without thinking twice, we slap our little sausage fingers onto that bad boy, and get whisked away to the audience pathway. On the other side of that fog wall was Rykard, the trouser snake of envy. Spear in hand, we approached the god-devouring serpent. Our goals weren't so different, and yet, I needed the great rune that snake was hiding from me. I'm not gonna lie, this boss is incredibly easy. The game hands you the ultimate weapon to fight this thing right out the gate, so all you have to do is spam its overpowered weapon art, and it's as easy as... Easy as... Easy... Easy as... Now, if you were like me, you were a decently high level when fighting this boss on your first playthrough. You'd probably already made it to the mountaintop of the giants and had enough FP to stunlock this thing to death. With all that extra power, it's no wonder why so many people think this boss is easy, but the truth is, this thing is complete and utter bullshit. His first phase has an attack that is nigh impossible to dodge unless you're always positioned perfectly and immediately run at the first sign of danger. You can't roll through it, you can't jump it, you can't run to the side, you can't block it unless you're already far enough away. I want to punch myself in the dick right now. This move is overlooked by so many people, probably just because they don't get insta-killed by it. But in reality, there is probably not a single attack in the game that is harder to dodge than this one. Except maybe that one attack from the Elden Beast, but we'll get to that later. I spent about 2 hours on this fight, and it's thanks entirely to that one single bullshit attack. The next hurdle was in Phase 2, where he starts raining down exploding skulls once he gets below a certain health. These skulls were completely unpredictable, and I was instantly dead if one fell on me. I saw only one out for this fight, and that was to topple him before he could call down the rain of skulls. It took many an agonizing attempt, but finally... Okay. Is this it? Yeah! Oh, thank God! Third great rune acquired. 4 to go. But first... Get fucked, Tanith.
Oh my God.
Wow. Oh yeah! I needed her helmet. Along came a courier with letter in hand. To the greatest serpent ravager in all of the land. Rumors have spread of your recent activities. We invite you to join the Radon festivities. We have much respect for the skill you possess. Should you wish to join us, please head to this address. The letter's contents left Short King confused. If this was a joke, he was not amused. An invite? For him? To a social event? Surely the sender had some ill intent. He warily ventured to the address detailed, but a ballista shot almost left him impaled. A troll blocked the gate, so he went around flank, growing more suspicious that this was all a prank. He walked through the door of the venue at last, where 2 men waited to kick his tight ass. Beaten and battered, Short King pushed on, to a lone man in a chapel devoted to Radon. He looked at Short King and began to speak. You're already here? The festival's not till next week. No, but for real, I had no idea why the festival wasn't active, so I checked the wiki. Turns out, you either need to progress far enough in Ronnie's questline, or use the Grand Lift deck disc at least once. Since talking to women was off the table for Short King, and the deck disc medallion seemed like a pain to get, I took a gamble. Literally the only reason I'm here was to see if that triggered the Radon Festival. Because the wiki says when you go up the Grand Lift, but that feeling in my balls says... So, quick editor's note. The error on the wiki was actually fixed from the time of writing to the time of editing this. And I went on this whole little rant where I thought I was being like a cheeky bastard. So I'm just going to speed that part up to like 300% or something. Turns out actually life was wrong, so let me do their job for them. In order to activate the Radon Festival, all you have to do is enter the Alpha's Plateau at least once. With that, I returned to the main slot and took part in the Radon Festival. To take down a muscular hunk as strong and handsome as Starscourge Radon, we'd need an army. So, Short King called upon everyone from his Discord friend list. His 2 weeb friends, some furry, a necrophile, and a random dude from Grindr. Together, they had the collective strength of one entire man. But what is the power of a man when faced with a demigod? He, died in a few hits to Hoarfrost Stomp. Then a star crashed into the planet and probably killed a bunch of people. If anyone asks, we were never here. Short King was triumphant, 4 runes in possession, as he trounced mighty foes at his own discretion. His journey had brought him as far as Landel, to a rampart blocked by a draconic tree sentinel. Slaying this knight proved quite the task, but soon he was beaten and let Short King pass. What lay straight ahead brought about despair. A mysterious slight wall blocked passage to the lair. So yeah, as many other people have discovered, there's a barrier out in front of the capital that only opens if you have 2 or more Great Runes. However, even if you have 2 Great Runes, it still won't open until you've talked to the 2 fingers. Which means traveling to the Round Table Hold. Which means talking to Melina. So, that's it. That's where the run ends. 4 Great Runes is the max number you can get maidenless. Is what an inferior gamer would say. Do you remember that chest that teleported us to the Divine Bridge? Do you remember the ruptured crystal tear we picked up from that Erdtree avatar? No? If you've watched a certain other video on my channel, you might already know where this is going. By drinking this exploding juice and plummeting down an elevator shaft, it's possible to use the force from the blast to survive the fall. It just requires the right timing. This is it. I did it! I fucking did it! Let's go! That was the one. I don't get it. I don't understand why, but that was the one. And that's that. We now have access to all of Landel, meaning we can challenge Morgoth the Grace-Given for the next Great Rune. But before that, we'd have to get through a holographic projection of Godfrey the First Chad. This fight curb-stomped my shit for about 7 straight attempts. Then it turned into a battle of who could pound the ground with their grimy floor slappers the hardest. Turns out, impaling your feet on chunks of ice really hurts. With Godfrey dead once and for all, I decided to take a shortcut down to unlock some other parts of the capital. The way down was being gatekept by a Crucible Knight, so I dealt with the situation swiftly and professionally. What are you looking at? Can't a guy just... Sorry! Time to fight Morgoth. Just outside the boss room, there's a suspicious summon sign for an NPC sitting there. Which NPC, you ask? I don't know. I didn't check. Probably nobody important. After dying to Morgoth only a couple times, I decided it'd be much more efficient to use the Margit Shackle on him. The Margit Shackle is an item that turns this encounter from a battle to a slapstick comedy routine. The item is sold by a little-known merchant named Patches who is hiding in some cave early on in the game. I head over to the cave where he's supposed to be, but... yeah, I have no idea why Patches straight up dies if you progress too far. But hey, at least we can use his bell bearing to unlock his shop and buy the shackle. Oh wait. You need to give the bell bearing to the Twin Maiden husks. At the Round Table Hold. Haha, oh well. Who needs the Margit Shackle anyways? Morgott is probably gonna be easy. That only took half as long as Rykard, by the way. 5 out of 7 great runes acquired. After the fight with Morgott, Melina would normally rejoin you here and talk about burning the Erd Tree. But at this point in the game, I was boundary breaking beyond what FromSoft probably had anticipated. I was terrified of what would happen if I rested at that grace. Would she show up and act like we'd been on a journey this whole time? Would she come to me with her offer for the first time? To be honest, I lied to you guys. The summon sign I mentioned outside the boss room belonged to Melina, which means she must have journeyed out to the capital too. Would I have to confront her after all? I couldn't warp out of this room. I was forced to sit at the site of grace before I could continue. So I clenched my ass and braced for heartbreaking defeat. Please don't show up. I don't know what I'm gonna do if she does. But nothing happened. It was just a normal site of grace. No maidens. The run is saved. Or so I thought. I approached the next mandatory area of the game, a seal that disappears only after defeating Morgott. Please let this door be open. FromSoft, if you design games well, this will be open, and I won't need to go to the round table for this shit, okay? If you have any respect for the type of challenge that I'm doing right now in your video game, you will let this door be open when I get to it. You are the ones who made it possible to refuse Melina's help, okay? This is on you. Really. This isn't my fault that I'm attempting such a run, because you gave us the option to, FromSoft. Remember? And while most Tarnished would have thrown in the towel by now, I, and I alone, have persisted to this point. It looks like it is still fucking closed. That looks pretty closed to me. I defended From Software. I defended them. I was like, okay, you know, the door being sealed to Lanedale, that makes sense. You know, it's the 2 fingers that grant you passage. This is inexcusable. So, that's it. With this gate in the way, it's impossible to get to the Grand Lift of Rold to access the mountaintop of the Giants. Even if we somehow made it to the lift, Melina is the one who gives us the Rold medallion. So without that medallion, the lift is unusable. That answers the question. Is it possible to collect every Great Rune Maidenless? Unfortunately for us, the answer is no. Or at least, that's probably what you thought I'd say. Do you remember rule number 4? Thank you for sticking around to the end. If you want to see the conclusion of this run, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Since this is my first attempt at a voiceover commentary, I'm sure it sounded at least a little rough, so feel free to leave your scathing critiques in the comments so I can get better at this. I've also set up a Discord server you can join if you feel so inclined, where you can discuss challenge runs, video games, or whatever. I won't judge. I'm usually streaming these challenges live on my Twitch, so follow me there to see what other self-imposed restrictions I come up with for other games. Anyways, that's all for now. See you in part 2.